What's going on, guys? Bingo here. I'm with the Duel Factory for Season 2, Episode 4 of X-2 Drop, our weekly Yu-Gi-Oh! Podcast we do, talking about anything and everything in the game. This week was the first full week of stuff, basically, since the ban list, and the format has shaped up a little bit. There's probably some more fine-tuning that's going to happen. More people are going to shift to certain decks. But we had the release of Magical Hero last weekend, and then we had the PPG this weekend. So at least we have some sort of results to talk about. And before I get into that, Joe, did you want to say something?
Oh, yeah. John Moore can suck my ass.
So, yeah, the PPG, the results were pretty heavy on the Spiral side for the first weekend, in my opinion. Joe thinks a little differently. But there was 56% Spiral, so nine Spiral, and then one Goki, one Salad, one Cyber Dragon Orcus, one Dino, one Danger Lunalite, not playing the rank up engine, and then two Altergeist. So I thought it was going to be more variety, or it basically, like, you could play anything and do well with it. Just knowing that Spiral was a deck to beat. But Spiral does have its inherent flaws, and I figured people weren't going to have, their deck list fine-tuned at an event of this caliber. But Joe, you, God damn it, before I get into that, there were three different variants of Spiral because, like I said, no one really knows how to play it. There's Pure Spiral, Scrap Spiral, and Extravagant Spiral, which to me came out of left field. But Joe, you want to talk about those a little bit?
Oh, yeah. So, one, I thought there was going to be more Spiral, for sure in the top cut, because I just thought, by far, I thought it was just the best deck, especially after watching some testing and watching some video on combo theory and stuff like that. I'm with you on the Extravagant Spiral. I didn't even know that was a version of the deck. I just thought that was, blasphemy, but what do I know? But I thought for sure you would see more. I'm not sure if everyone caught onto it, but I think the scrap variant of the actual Spiral deck is a lot better than all of them. Just because it gives a better option of going second, and your card, you can always make a scrap Wyvern. It's like one of the easier cards to make and stuff like that. It's just...
So, explain Scrap Wyvern. What I actually don't even know what materials it takes to make, and I'm not 100% on the effect. So explain how it fits with the deck.
Scrap Wyvern, all it takes is a scrap monster and any other monster to make it. And more or less, let me get the card actually pulled up, because Scrap Wyvern, more or less, it summons any scrap. I'm pretty sure it summons any scrap monster from the deck. Let me just confirm on that effect. But the idea behind it is you always have access to your Spiral engine if you have that, because if you have access to Scrap Recycler, it sends Quick Fix to your graveyard because it's a machine monster. So you always have access to it. That's the idea behind it, and it's better going second because you can pop card. You can essentially just pop cards going off while still doing your regular combo. So that's kind of the idea behind it. And I see people playing that instead of the danger monsters and stuff like that. But I'm trying to get the card pulled up here, but I can't find it.
All right. While we're waiting on that, the reason Spiral is as good as it is, as I'm sure we all know, is the release of Magician Souls. And if you're wanting to play this deck, this format, you're looking at spending a lot of money, because those right now are $130. And the Extravagance build, which honestly I don't think will be the go-to build in the future, because it just... One, it's super expensive because you need triple cards of like Apollosa, and it also just there's that variance with Extravagance, and it limits your combo potential. So it really lowers the ceiling, but arguably raises the consistency of the deck. So I think the best players are going to gravitate towards one of the other two variants of the deck. But Joe, did you find the card? Probably not.
Yes and no. I can see the Google search here. For some reason, my computer just doesn't want to pull it up. But more or less, it's just... It gives you more access to Spiral Quick Fix. That's the idea behind it. And technically Spiral Drones, because Drones is a machine-type monster. So I always have access to those cards, even if you don't draw, Magician Soul or if you don't draw 2 Spiral monsters to get into double Helix, because that would usually be like the go-to combo. But like, it lets you, that one card and Magician Soul just lets you play through so much stuff, and you generate so much advantage for stuff that you're already doing. Because Quick Fix and go get Big Red, then you can bring it back. That's a free spell card to send to the graveyard to draw a card, and then with Spiral Mission Rescues on top of it, it just gets worse and worse and worse. So.
Yeah, and I mean, from the deck profiles that I have seen, now there haven't been many released from this event, but like the Spiral cards themselves are like arguably the weakest cards in the deck. Like they're almost like other outside of Quick Fix and drones. Like you really don't want to draw. Obviously, you don't want to draw a Master Plan. Resort's fine, but like agent, some decks were playing one agent, which I feel like is pretty crazy. I feel like you need to, like, not every deck is or turn it's going to be over. Not every game is going to be over in one turn. But the extravagance builds, which are more focused on like controlling, it seems they're opting to play higher counts of agent and actually playing tough, which I like more control variants. So like the Wombo combo, Trigate, Sleeper, Apollosa, like Griffin, and like all those other cards. I'm not good at those decks, but I mean, the power level of this deck versus other decks in the format seems to be pretty overshadowed, right? Like,
Oh, for sure.
Orcust, I mean, Cyber Dragon Orcust topped, and I don't know if that's just like Orcust with Nashter, you know, or if it's like an actual Cyber Dragon deck mixed with the Orcust cards, because it's not out yet, but like that is the only variant of Orcust that topped this event, which is relatively surprising.
Oh yeah, like I'm surprised there wasn't a more representation of the deck, because like I know it lost heart, but like it's still a very, very consistent deck. And I don't know if it's just because people don't want to play it with because we don't have harp anymore, or if maybe that's just like the actual power level of the Spiral decks, which makes it kind of scary if you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, I've been playing Spiral without souls for like 2 weeks now because, I mean, I didn't order them, and I got a box of the Legendary Duelists right here to open. Hopefully I'll get one out of there, but like the deck is still nuts. I mean, it always has been. Sleeper's a hell of a card. A lot of rogue decks can't even play through that, let alone Apollosa with a Dweller or Trigate underneath it. So I think the Dweller is just everywhere right now. So that, I mean, that could be hurting Orcust as a whole because it's in just about every side deck besides what's that deck? Altergeist or extra deck, not side deck.
I don't know, man. it's just crazy with this one. Like this one card is the whole reason that deck's like actually that good too. That's crazy.
It's just like, is this what Konami wanted, or do you think it was just like we forgot this is a thing and now we have a problem?
Honestly, it probably got overshadowed by everything else because, like, think about it. Would you I mean, I'm sure Spiral still would have been played even if you don't have a ban list, but I don't think it would have been like this. Like, I don't think Spiral, like, Magician, I'd almost call it Spiral Soul, but Magician Soul was like, I don't think it sits at $130. I think it's a $60 card at that point, but I think it's like, there's just other decks that do what it does simpler, but we just don't have those options anymore. So, like, everyone just like, oh, let's play this. And like now, like the TCG is just a filthy degenerate and it's going to get a Dark Magician card, probably limited at some point. Because like if it's not this deck and they decide to do something with Spiral so far, it's going to be something else. Because this card actually is just like legitimately insane. It just depends on what you're playing in at that point.
Like if Souls ever gets touched because of Spiral, I'm actually just going to be pissed off. Because there's no reason a tier 0 deck from it was 2018, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, a tier 0 deck from 2018 that just happens to squeak by with its 2 hits on the ban list that kept it in check after its reign on the format. Like I'm actually gonna be pissed off.
I'd be a little pissed too, especially since like what? This is the first decent Dark Magician's support that you've had in how long, and it's literally just getting abused by some other deck. If a deck from the past.
Yeah, and like Spiral was reaching that status where it was like that fan favorite, like you know how it goes, where like the hated deck of the format, enough time passes and it becomes like the underdog fan favorite. Like it's good to see it top again, like Necroz and Burning Abyss. It just wasn't there yet. And I think that's because it was a link strategy and people aren't really the biggest fan of the mechanic as a whole. But I just can't believe that we're back in this dominant of a format, because I posted a picture the other day and it was top 32 and 30 of the 32 decks were Spiral. I'm like, are we about to go through this again?
What was it that hard? What is it they said in Batman? You either die a hero, live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Yeah, I mean, Spiral died a villain, and it's about to be a villain again. Because like, looking at these other decks, like how is Salad supposed to for Materia Appaloosa with Sleeper? How is Orcus supposed to play through that?
Let's be 100% fair here. If you put one monster to gate in front of Salamangreat without Will, they're not doing anything.
Very
Sleeper's
true.
always going to be Sleeper is going to be hard to deal with anyway for decks that don't have any way to like start like out resourcing your opponent. It's not like what's a good example? It's not like every deck has like a Colossus type monster that just generates you free advantage for cards being destroyed, right?
Yeah.
So naturally, decks that can't grind out through destruction are going to have a hard time dealing with Sleeper. What's another in a case scenario? Like, so Orcus, Dengursu can only do so much. And
you have
Spiral
to
Resort
get
reads
to Dingirsu.
Yeah. Spiral Resort reads that the monster equipped with it is unaffected by card effect, right?
No, it can't be targeted or destroyed by card effects.
Can't be targeted. So technically you can still Dengursu Sleeper away, and that would cause the field to be nuked.
Can Appaloosa negate your own monster effects? That's a good question. Continue.
I think Appaloosa is only monster. I think Appaloosa is only your own effects. But I mean, like, you have to get to that point. And then it's just like there's a lot of things that like a lot of the current decks just can't deal with, especially with that card. And that's why I think the scrap build of Spiral is so much better and stuff like that, because it just makes going second so easy at that point. Now, don't get me wrong, Spiral still has the classic flaw that it loses to God knows how many hand traps. Yeah, but now you have cards like Call by the Grave. You can make Appaloosa before you get hand. Like, there's just so much. It has so much going for it right now, and I don't think Konami realized that. Or maybe they did, and this is what they wanted, so Magical Hero would sell. But, I mean, it just...
Speaking of hand traps, man, Droll and Lockbird, from the couple of videos I've seen, was main decked a lot in this format, which, I mean, isn't surprising, because if we all remember Spiral format, it was like Droll and Reaper were everywhere. So Droll coming back into the format is like, Droll's never a healthy card, right? We've talked about this before. It is just a check and balance to when a format is getting, like, I know it just started, but when a format's out of control, Droll is like one of those cards that can slow it down enough so that you can play going second.
And that's one of the things. I think you have to play it. Like, you can't take the risk. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like without Colossus, Thunder Dragon with one Colossus would have been a pretty decent counter to this deck, right? Like, you'd have to out the Colossus before you combo, and then they're going to have a Titan because they only have one Colossus. So you have to play through a pop and a mistake that can protect itself. So I felt like that would have been a pretty good check if this was intended, but they just straight up murdered that deck.
There's no way Spiral plays through a Colossus. They can't do it.
No, they would have to tech specifically for it in the extra or the side deck.
Now, unfortunately, my boy's gone. Rest in peace. But
So how do we deal with this? Because honestly,
it's like a puzzle that has to be solved now.
Yeah, because honestly, I think just this being the first event is the only reason the representation is as low, right? I think if the more time goes on, the less these other decks are going to be able to stand up to this deck, because its power and like what it can accomplish going first or second, as long as you know how to play the deck. It's not the easiest deck to play going second, but as long as you know what you're doing, I don't think Salamangreat or these other decks can stand up to it.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's just because it's the first, technically first event of the format. PPGs aren't Konami sanctioned, but I think it has that a lot of it to do with that since it's the first event and people know Spiral is good, so they just fell back on that. I don't know if it's gonna overpower the format still, but I still think it's definitely the best deck. But I think other decks have a chance to like adjust to it and stuff like that. Like, I think you just have to like think differently in terms of what can actually be played against Spiral and stuff like that. Because if you remember, when the deck first came out, there were some people playing like Trickstar rose in popular because it had a good matchup against the deck and stuff like that, and some people started playing Invoked and whatnot. And people forget about these strategies. Now it might be different because there's new cards coming out and stuff like that. Like we have a whole new set coming out too that has other cards, like the new Gizmek card that's really good and stuff like that. So I think it's too early to decide that. But if it keeps pacing like this, I think your prediction of 70% Spiral everywhere and it's just being like the minutes of the format might actually be right. But I can't give it. I don't want to give a guarantee on that because I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, and even now, like, Called by the Grave wasn't a card when Spiral was the best deck, right? And even now, the hand traps that can stop it or answer it, just they might not resolve. They could get an Apollousa at 5 summons. They can get Called by the Grave in hand, and you're just shit out of luck. So it might turn into one of these die roll formats where you're at a severe disadvantage going second. And I hate these formats, man. If it does, like I'm still going to play. I'm not saying it's going to be, but if it is one of those formats, I'm going to have a hard time playing because I'll just fall back on Hand Trap Invoked and do the same thing I did before, set up Mechaba and try to stop Double Helix from resolving.
I don't know. I don't think it's the ideal situation to be in, but I do think even though with Spiral being this prevalent right now, I still think this format's infinitely better than dealing with Orcust running everywhere because that was just frustrating. But
yeah, go ahead.
I don't think it's more of the same. I think it's toned down significantly, but adjusting to the power levels of the actual decks, like, it's not going to be fun. But I mean, I think it has room for improvement over time. Just getting used to the new format, you know what I mean?
I think it's a good change in dynamic that we've been dealing with for God knows how long. Like it's nice to see something besides Orcust and Sky Striker, even though I wish I could still play that deck. And it's not the longest format. We are going to get a list before April. So I know it says at the end of March, like we're going to get a list because we cannot go into MR5 without an adjustment. So it's only a 2-month format, and you know it's going to be interesting to see how it develops. And like I don't want to play the deck, but I feel like I'm going to have to. But I gotta look. I don't even think I'm going to regional before April, so like I might not even buy Magician Souls before then.
We're gonna see. Like,
so given what we talked about already, what do you feel like you're gonna play?
Well, I'm 100%. I still think like Hero's like a really strong deck. Like regardless of Spiral putting up like a bunch of like Appaloosas and stuff like that, I think that deck's actually I think it's gonna take a big like the population of Hero has like a great following, but like it needs like actual like decent pilot behind it for people to actually start noticing it. Because like I don't know if you've seen like actual Hero players, but the Hero community actually sucks. Like I'm not even gonna try to like sugarcoat or anything. The Hero community as a whole sucks.
Sucks as in they don't know how to deck build. Or sucks as in they're just a bunch of douchebags?
We'll go with the latter on that one.
Okay.
And like, it's just what it is. But there's that one. And honestly, you said Hand Trap Invoker and stuff like that would be a good one. Honestly, I was thinking a lot about it. I think Invoked Mech Knight might actually be like one of the better decks to play right now. It's always naturally had a good matchup against Spiral. Mechaba is an insane card against that deck.
Mechaba against Sleeper.
Mm-hmm. You still have access to 3 Super Power, and you still have access to 2 Mind Control. Like, those cards are insane against that deck, especially with, I mean, you can make it where it just depends on what you're looking for and what you're trying to clear at that point. I'm trying to remember, is Spiral Sleeper, is it a light attribute by chance or not?
I want to say it's light. I'm pulling it up right now.
Because it's a light attribute, so I mean, you can use Super Poly to take Spiral Sleeper and turn it into a Mecha Buck. So I feel like that's insane. They're going to leave up extra columns for you, so Mech Knights are going to be summoned for free. But that deck has that consistency issues like any other time the deck's been relevant in the format or anything like that. But I think that's a very, very good choice to go with, especially if it's going to be littered with that specific type of deck. There was one other deck I was thinking about. I don't know how good Guru Control is actually going to be. Like, I still think it's a solid deck, but like Lightning Storm's on the horizon, so like that's going to be kind of tough. But
yeah, I mean, Guru Control didn't top the event, but I just don't think it's just a one event. You know, I don't think it's a big enough card pool to completely rule out a deck.
I think those 3 decks have the best chance of doing well in a spiral littered format currently, especially what we have available to us. But I think, I don't know. Invoked might actually be a little bit better in Hero at this point in terms of going up against Spiral, but like it's kind of hard to like guess that because like if you think about it, Hero actually has the same access to cards that go well against that deck, just like Invoke does, but I think Invoke plays it better because it doesn't have a restriction of what monsters it can summon.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about the Appaloosa sleeper board, like you normal summon Alistair, and they got an Appaloosa, right? Like if you don't have Super Poly, then you might be shit out of luck.
But you also have cards like Infinite Impermanence and stuff like that you could play going first. So, I mean, there's a lot of cards that we have access to now that we didn't have to access to. Because I remember when Spiral first came out, we had access to Evenly Match, but we didn't have Infinite Impermanence. And that kind of changes the dynamic of a lot of things because you can turn those Appaloosas off and stuff like that. Yeah. So we have access to cards. And it's just positioning at that point.
And depending on which variant of the deck takes off, like they're not all setting up a Omni Negate. So cards like Evenly Matched can be extremely powerful against the deck. Yes.
Oh, they can be devastating. 100% devastating.
They could leave Sleeper or they could leave Appaloosa, but like that outs all the other problem cards, you know? Like your deck.
I think the key is... Go ahead.
I was just going to say your deck should be able to play through one troublesome monster at the end of the day.
Right. I think the key is here, if you want to beat the deck, like actually beat it, you have to be able. It has to be able to something that pairs well against it, that also does well against it. Because game 1, like I seen a lot of. I don't know if it happened at the PPG because I didn't get to watch a lot of it because we were actually really busy at my store this week. But being able to play through Dweller, I think, is going to be like really big too. Because I saw a lot of them going. I see a lot of people, especially online, they go turn 1 Dweller blind, and like that turns off a lot of decks. So you need something that can actually play against those types of decks. And I think that's where you position one of those 3 decks that I mentioned earlier. Like Hero has kind of a tough time because you have to be able to play Malicious and stuff like that. But the other 2 decks, I don't think they have as hard of a time doing it with that way either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that turn 1 Dweller is keeping decks like Salamangreat and Orcust behind the curve because those decks just can't play.
Like Dweller's like a god card against them at that point because like you just turn off their entire strategy gets turned off by that one monster, and like it's like the great equalizer, but also like it makes the big elephant in the room like even worse.
Yeah,
because like it can make it so easily, and it's just like a deterrent for so many other decks.
Yeah, because I mean the only card that or the only effect that Dweller shuts off for Spiral is Quick Fix, I believe.
No, it'll turn off the trap card, the Spiral Mission Rescue.
Oh, I thought it was just monster effects can't activate in the graveyard.
I think it's card effect.
Turn it up.
Because that's why it was so good against True Draco, because the spell and trap cards can activate in the graveyard.
No, not a actor. The opponent cannot activate any cards. Okay.
Yeah, so it's like the great equalizer.
Yeah, that card is going to be huge this format again. Which thank God it got its ultra rarity printing finally instead of a super for what was it, many years.
It was only a super rare for the longest time, and then it finally got a gold rare, which I think was a slap in the face. And then it got another super rare printing, and then it finally got an ultra.
All right. So let's talk about good side deck or tech options for this format, because there's some overlap between Control and Spiral, but I mean, evenly, we already talked about it's one super poly. I mean, there's got to be some good targets besides actual Mechaba. I just can't think of any, because Diplex Chimera is 2 link monsters. That doesn't really apply. So what are some cards we can play?
I mean, you still have generic cards. I don't know, because I'm trying to picture the boards and stuff like that, but like, I think that card is actually really good going first because it interrupts a lot of plays. Going second, cracking the board is going to be a little different because, like, say, Sleeper's a light, Appaloosa's a wind,
Dollar's a water, and they're all different types.
Devil's a water and stuff like that are all different types because I don't know. Mud Dragon requires 2 monsters of the same attribute but different type, right?
Yeah. So that doesn't apply.
So that doesn't apply there, but there's something else. I mean, graveyard cards are really, really good against Spiral because it keeps you from doing that.
I mean, DD Crow
is probably the best generic one because it hits everything across the board.
Yeah, DD Crow
like,
can fucking mess up a combo.
It takes Master Plan away. It takes, for example, you can take Spinny, Foxy, Jaguar away from Salamangreat. You can take away the monsters targeted by Symbol Skeleton from Orcust.
It can hurt Altergeist in certain situations, but I mean, you probably have better options.
Manifestation their cards and stuff like that. Like, I think that card's really, really good across the board. If it not, it might be main deck worthy. I don't know if I would main deck it. That might be going a little far.
It really depends on the next week or two how it shapes up.
I think Nibiru is like a phenomenal card right now. Like, phenomenal, especially with Striker out of the picture.
Yeah.
Not granted.
I was just going to say, not every hand can set up Appaloosa before 5 summons for Spiral. So, and it kills Salad. Orcust, they can play around it a little bit, but I mean, at that point, they're just bringing back Galatea in the end phase.
Yeah.
But Nibiru is good. Dark Ruler No More saw quite a bit of play this weekend, which makes sense, but I mean, you're still usually under Standby Dweller.
Yeah, the problem is with Dark Ruler No More, even if you activate it, you can't kill your opponent that turn. That's like the real big problem. That's why I don't like that card. Trying to think of other cards and stuff like that just to get like a lot of mileage against this deck.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Droll. You should definitely have your Droll and Lockbirds ready because it's probably going to turn into one of those formats.
Bird's the word, man. Bird's the word.
Pankratops, unfortunately, is that one, but it can answer the rank up spell just like it was able to before. What else?
Well, are the Spiral decks even really playing the rank up spell?
No, Spiral isn't, but people are still messing around with it for Caliuga or VFD.
I think the Lunalite deck, the actual Lunalite deck, might actually be really good against the Spiral deck. Just because of how many monsters it can pump out.
Yeah, Chick Tiger is just unfair.
Oh, for sure. It's actually kind of scary.
I mean, I remember in Spiral format, Gamma was picking up in popularity a lot, but then Midbreaker Field... Midbreaker Field was Goki format. What am I doing?
But no, Gamma, I think Gamma, you might actually start seeing it back in the main decks. Like, it just, you can't stop it by Called by the Grave, and, like, it's actually just pivotal in a lot of, like, it'll end a turn, like, never.
Yeah. And,
we don't have a lot of the Link monsters that we had, like, beforehand that let you play through all this stupid shit, like Summon Sork, Firewall, Gumblar, like, these, like, they're gone. So, like, these cards actually just get, like, a lot better and stuff like that. Like, the decks, like, the decks are going to do insane stuff, but, like, it doesn't have nearly as insane monsters that it had access to previously.
Yeah, I would agree. That's why I think that's half the reason the extravagance version of the deck works is because it just focuses on doing three things: setting up Dweller, Apollosa, and Sleeper. Like, it's not trying to wombo combo.
Wombo combo.
All right, but we're really short on time. You got final thoughts on the format?
It was an interesting first event. I'm excited to see what happens at actual events. You have a Team YCS coming up here pretty soon, so that's going to be really interesting. I think the TCG's filthy degenerates for making Magician's Souls $130, but we're not going to get into that.
Not again.
Douglas French has no sauce.
There it is.
Piccolo, you have no sauce. Hey.
All right, guys. I hope you did enjoy this episode. Please check us out. Same time, same place. iTunes, Google Play, 8 a.m. YouTube at 10 a.m. YouTube.com/BingoHD and YouTube.com/TheDuelFactory. If you do have a topic you want us to talk about, or you just want to talk about anything, check us out on those YouTube. Leave a comment, whatever you want to do. But I will see you guys back here next week. Peace out.
Bye.